Here's a little story for you. Once upon a time over in Japan, two guys met in an elevator, talked for a while, and then we got Hyrule Warriors. Neat, huh? Now, here's a different story about, well, Hyrule Warriors. More specifically, the game's plot, or what little it has at least. Both before and after its release in 2014, it was an enormous hit, opening Zelda fans up to the fast-paced, button-mashing, soul-crushingly difficult Dynasty Warriors. Not surprisingly, the developers took liberties on both fronts in an attempt to hybrid the two very different styles into something that resembled both while still being its own thing. While it easily made it to the top of my Games of 2014 list, yeah, even above Smash 4, that's not to say I was blind to its problems, the most obvious of which being the story mode. Aside from being incredibly short and predictable at every turn, it introduced a new villain to the series, and she was... well, that, which certainly brought a mix of emotions from fans. Gratuitous cleavage aside, she's pretty uninspired, and only being able to gather the Triforce pieces, do nothing with them, and get her ass beat. It got me thinking though, one cold night last year while shoveling the driveway, true story by the way, but I digress. What is up with Sia? It really seems like there's a potential fountain of lore and backstory they could have given her, but it mostly equates to the story of a Yandere simulator, and now that I make that comparison, yeah, that's weirdly accurate. But anyway, I propose that there is more to Sia, or at least could be more. Let's investigate. Aside from the game itself not being canon to the overall timeline, the majority of this is going to be speculation and assumption, so take all of this with a grain of salt and draw your own conclusions, but I present a question to you. Who is Sia really? Did she really just come out of nowhere as this previously silent deity living in the background of everything until her fangirl crush got out of hand? I don't think so. In fact, I think it's possible to not only reliably place Hyrule Warriors on the timeline, but doing so gets a ball rolling toward a theory that makes her motivations not only more plausible, but more understandable too. Let's start with the timeline. Prior to a few references here and there, and legends adding in Wind Waker, the main three games represented in Hyrule Warriors were Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword. This is because Sia, as the Guardian of Time, uses her power to open rifts to different places and times throughout Hyrule's history. If we were to place the game somewhere, it's safe to say that it would be after these three games. After all, it's a lot more likely she would travel back to definitive periods that she's familiar with, especially since grabbing minions from the future may not work as well since they could disappear at any moment as you change the past. We can also compare the designs for the main Triforce trio. It goes without saying that they take the most inspiration from Twilight Princess, while the world itself comes more from Ocarina, which, in turn, just so happens to be the basis for Twilight Princess. With that same mindset, consider how the fragments of Ganondorf's soul were sealed away, 3 in the past and 1 with the Master Sword, all placed by whichever Link decided to do so. If it took place before one of these games, how would he have any knowledge of these locations? How could Oot Link know that someday in the future a mirror would let him use a giant rock as his personal subway to a parallel world of Slenderman and they'd be cool with him storing a fragment of evil incarnate in their back room? Of course, none of this could really be considered evidence, considering even pre-DLC content doesn't really support this, but I would suggest it's at least reasonable to assume Hyrule Warriors would take place not long after Twilight Princess in the Young Link timeline. I understand this is all flimsy at best, but let me explain a little bit further, and you might be more willing to believe it. I propose that Sia existed before Hyrule Warriors. In fact, not only has she been mentioned, but she's a crucial element responsible for the core mechanics of one of the most critically acclaimed entries in the series. A bold statement, I know, but I have my reasons. Let's begin by reviewing her backstory. In the Zelda universe, time is overseen by the Guardian, who lives by herself in the middle of nowhere with the sole purpose of just watching, but never interfering, as the game puts it. It also says that a unique soul caught her attention, most likely because he kept popping up. In an existence where you see souls come and go on what must be a constant basis, being able to pick one out from among all the others would certainly catch your eye. As time passes, she sees him again and again, constantly reappearing to save the world, kill the evil guy, and be the hero that everyone else wishes they could be. In an existence filled with nothing but watching people live brief and insignificant lives that you're forbidden to even see in person at the very least, the isolation that causes would lead anyone to latch onto something, anything really, that one could project emotion onto. Frankly, it's surprising she didn't glue some googly eyes onto her crystal ball and name it Wilson. If you look at just the in-level cutscenes, she seems pretty basic and underdeveloped. Yeah, that's not what I... Just cut to something else. There, good enough. She's just a fangirl at surface level, but when you look at things from her perspective, it's completely understandable that she would fall for him. People of all types fall for this kind of ideal savior to whisk them away from a miserable life all the time, and not just in old Disney movies. At first, her crush was harmless at worst, but she eventually noticed that Link wasn't the only one coming back. So did Zelda, and the powers that be were just as determined to ship them to hell and back as much as fanfic writers, and seeing the one person you've ever been able to feel a connection to constantly being drawn to someone else without even knowing you exist, it hurts. And from there, it gets worse. Generations of Links and Zeldas come and go, time after time after time, until something unexpected happens. The timeline split. As an outside observer, she's able to witness all three at the same time, but her obsession focuses in on one, the only timeline where Link is still around. Obviously not wanting to think about the one where Link dies, she looks to the adult timeline. Here she sees Zelda send him away, two souls held together by fate, separated for the first time in centuries. Zelda stays behind and Link goes into a third timeline to live the childhood he never had. Sia, of course, follows. However, we all know Link, and normal childhood isn't exactly his thing, so after Navi leaves him at the Temple of Time, he sets out on a new adventure away from Hyrule and once again away from Zelda. But, as we all know, he doesn't get far. As Sia watches, Link plummets underground, his only friends and most precious belongings stripped away at the last minute. And he dies there. Devastated, she does everything in her power to do something, but even she can't bring back the dead, so she does the next best thing. From old and new memories of the places he's been, people he's met, and enemies he's faced, she creates the imaginary world of Termina, a strange mishmash of landscapes with no logic filled with familiar faces, where he can conquer the one that killed him, and more importantly, understand his death by helping others accept theirs, in a world where hiding your true identity is common, where fears and insecurities don't really need to be dealt with. A place to hide your real face behind a mask. This may seem pretty far-fetched, and I wouldn't blame you, but what if I told you there's a line of dialogue that brings all of this into perspective? And not surprisingly, it comes from the game's literal exposition fairy, Tattle. Somebody, anybody, goddess of time, help us please. We need more time. The goddess of time. Interesting choice of words, since every other game clearly states that the only gods in this world are Din, Farore, Nehru, and Hylia, the latter of which came after the first three and eventually became Zelda. A deity that governs time would probably be a pretty significant one to mention, wouldn't it? Unless she weren't actually a goddess, but was, let's say, a powerful sorceress that lived deep in the woods, where no one but a few fairies and their nosy friend would even know she existed. After all, it's pretty much a fact that anyone lost in the forest becomes either a Stalfos or Skull Kid. In a kingdom where Link and maybe two other people are the only ones with backbones, who would risk that over a rumor, especially when anyone that does go never comes back? And it's here, in parts of the forest where no human could ever go, that Sia witnesses Link's soul pass once again. But something is different now. She helped him, and through Tattle, he knows she did. She was surely thinking, now it's just a waiting game. He'll come back again and want to find me. Then I'll just lead him to me. However, things are never that simple. Link does return, but not in the way she expected. He comes back as a shadow of his former self, still tormented and miserable, bitter about being unable to pass on his knowledge and experience. His time in Termina didn't help, and not a shred of what happened there remained in his memory. And that was the last straw. From there, the events of Hyrule Warriors take place. To Link, Zelda, and even Ganondorf. It's just another war to fight, and another obstacle in the way of each side's ideal future. But to Sia, it's a seemingly endless life of torturous loneliness and selfless benevolence, all left unnoticed, spanning more time than anyone can comprehend, coming to a boil in one final attempt to achieve any sort of happiness. And what does it amount to? Nothing. Hello again, Internet. This isn't... it's an end slate. This isn't normally something that I do, but... I mean, neither is this video, but I figured I would record a little something here at the end just to kind of talk about what's going on. Like I said in the first Spore video that I posted, well, in the description of it at least because I had no commentary, there's definitely some changes going on in this channel, and I need to know what you guys think. I mean, this isn't normally something that I really do, but if you would like to, and if you enjoyed this video, then, you know, spread it around a little bit if you would like. I mean, that's really up to you, because, I mean, obviously what am I gonna do? Am I gonna be upset at you? Nah, that'll be fine. I mean, you know, even if you didn't like this video, I mean, you could spread it around that way and laugh at people and my terrible microphone and my awkward pronunciations and everything. You know, that could be fun too. Well, just, I guess I'm just keeping you guys up to date because I really need to get as much feedback on this as possible. Because I need to know if you guys liked it, I need to know what you didn't like, what you didn't think worked, if there's anything that didn't really go anywhere, and in general, if you just want to see more of this type of thing. I have a lot of different types of videos planned too, not just these. I might be doing just straight up game reviews at some point. I don't know if I will be yet, but I would like to. They got top 10s coming, some more analysis sort of videos, more theories like this. I mean, I even have a video coming down the hypothetical pipeline that compares Super Paper Mario to Until Dawn. It makes sense in context. I mean, I have my reasons, believe it or not. So yeah, just let me know what you think in the comments, or message me, do whatever you want to do, really. I mean, obviously that's up to you. So let me know, and I'll see you guys in future videos.